house because they killed one of the protesters. We discovered he's Christian, and they accused him that he's belonging to the Salafist group. I'm not joking. This is actually the official charge of George Sabra, who's a Christian activist and being accused as linked to the Salafist group. And this is why it's became difficult. But the other hand, the international community is not helping, because despite of 8 months, we cannot have only one resolution from the Security Council. The Security Council failed after the veto being practiced by Russia or China to condone what's happened in Syria, even that there is no economic sanctions, there is no refer to the crimes against the humanity to the International Criminal Court. This is why most people on the ground, they do believe now the peaceful demonstrations will not go to anywhere. We have to take arms, we have to take guns. Look what's happened in Libya. They decide after 10 days that peaceful demonstration will work with Al-Qaddafi. After 9 months, they have now, they kill Al-Qaddafi himself. And unfortunately, the example of Libya being inspired many people on the ground in Syria. Even that we do believe that taking arms in Syria is much more complicated, since we have different ethnic groups, will make that taking arms will make that lead to the civil war. And this is why the opposition and the National Syrian Council still actually insist to be for peaceful demonstration as strategy. With the same time, we should support the soldiers and the officers, the armed officers who defected to organize themselves. Where Syria is going, it's clear that no indication that the people will go to their homes or accept the Assad as a president anymore. He has too much blood in his hand, more than 4,000 have been killed, and no one will accept. But at the same time, the regime trying to invest in the fear of the civil war. Syria, just to be sure about that, Syria has no history of civil war. Never we have civil war between different ethnic groups. And this is, of course, some will say that this is the same like with Iraq. The only concern we have actually related to the Alawite community is nothing related to the Christian, because since the Christian are actually part of the Syrian society, being actually in 1952 the prime minister was Faris al-Khoury, and he's a Christian and a Protestant, and the Protestant is majority of the Christian in Syria are Orthodox. He's minority of the minorities. Even that he became prime minister for 2 terms. The concern we have actually regarding the Alawite minority, they don't have extended in other countries, and they never have links to the international community like the Maroons or the Druze in Lebanon. This is why they feel that if they lose the power with the Assad regime, they will be massacred, they will be killed. And this is trying actually with all the guarantees of the opposition and the Syrian National Council will not work. The only actual institution can give the guarantee for the Alawite community is the Arab League. This is why we insist for a main role for the Arab League in the crisis in Syria. With the same time, if the Arab League get more tougher position toward the Assad regime, it's quite difficult for Russia and China to practice any veto, because they will be actually faced or challenged by majority of the Arabs, and this is what will be difficult for the economic interest in the region. Today should be the Arab delegation in Damascus to meet with the Assad. We met actually with the Arab League last week in Cairo. We discussed about we will not accept any dialogue, keep Assad in his position, but we do negotiate about how he will exit and how can we move together to have democratic and civic state in the future. This is the issue. Then a few words about the role of the United States, which is really important right now. Syria is different than in Libya. The United States has no real interest in Libya, but they have the whole interest in Syria, because keeping Syria away from Iran, you have to change the Assad regime. Bringing the stability to Iraq or Lebanon, you have to change the Assad regime. And then to have a peace also with Israel, you have to change the Assad regime, because it has more than 40 years, and the Assad is not able to make any peace negotiations with Israel. This is why we do believe that the whole interest of the United States and the West should be in change the Assad regime. The United States, as my understanding, that reached the point that the Assad has to go, and President Obama repeated that in many statements. But with the same time, the United States is not able to do anything to make this happen. It's good to say it in the statements, in the rhetoric, but we will not do anything to make this happen, since actually the Arabs is not helpful, and we don't see any in the region, any consensus among the Arabs to help us in doing that. This is why we do believe it's important now for the United States to take the leadership, first on the Security Council, to bring the Russians and the Chinese on the table to agree on the resolution, to condemn the violence, then to put sanctions on Bashar al-Assad and other security officers, with the same time refer the crimes against humanity to the International Criminal Court. The second thing, actually, which really important, to work with the Arabs, because the Arabs, the Arab League never have a position in, or they help to solve any of the crises among the Arabs themselves. The only case was Libya, was an exception, because actually no one like Gaddafi is idiot, and all the Gulf countries pushed actually for him, the Emirati and the Saudi, they helped even that arming the opposition, giving them arm and the money to be sure that the Gaddafi should leave soon. But this is not the situation in Syria. But at the same time, after the Arab Spring, we do believe the Arab League should be reviewed its charter, and should be act as a regional organization, which more interest in the Arab people rather than the regime or the leader or the dictators themselves. And we do believe that if they insist on their mission on Syria, will be an open, different chapter on Syria. The third recommendation, the opposition now, it's much more organized itself through what the SNC, the Syrian National Council, despite of some of critiques of my friend Ammar maybe, or other groups, but we're still in the process actually to organize ourselves much more, and to include more people as an advisors or as a members. But the SNC, we can see right now, it's the most organized, with the same time, which include all the ethnic and different groups inside Syria and outside Syria. Which the good thing, which actually something we different than what's happening in Iraq or in. We don't put actually the different ethnic groups, because we don't put a council depends on the sectarian lines. We don't say that 30% for the Sunni, 10% for the Alawi, 10% of Christian, because actually will create that more division among the group or among the Syrian itself, since the sectarian language is a lovely one among the Syrians. This is why we insist in the council to have different political and social groups. All these groups will come to the table, but we ask every group actually to have Kurdish representative, Christian and other minorities among this political party. Which then, when as example, the Kurds maybe they have 10% of the Syrian population, but they reflect, depends on their qualification, and their leaders may have much more percentage in the leadership of the council. Then we don't have a council depends on the sectarian division among the Syrians, because